Hello, I'm Emily. I'm a master's student at the University of Victoria, and I study paleontology, specifically dinosaur paleontology. My research is on the morphology, so changes in size and shape of ankylosaur teeth. Ankylosaurs are those armored dinosaurs that have the big tail clubs. I'm a 2018 Schulich Leader from UBC, and I'm originally from Thunder Bay, and I moved out to the West Coast for school.
Oh, that's great. Hi everyone, my name is Andreas. I am a 2017 Schulich Leader from UofT. I graduated from the engineering science program. I'm now doing a PhD at MIT here in Cambridge, Massachusetts in quantum computing. I'm in the electrical engineering and computer science department here. Specifically, my research is on like building qubits with superconducting circuits and building amplifiers for those qubits. Okay. We can get started with our first topic. We are going to talk about the differences in grad school in Canada versus the US. So maybe Emily, I'll ask you, how was your application process for Canadian graduate schools? Did you look at some? Did you already have in mind one that you really wanted to? What was that like?
I had like several in mind that I wanted to apply for. I actually applied to a couple in the UK as well. And then I just sort of looked at like what dates the applications were due, who specifically was at those schools that I wanted to work with. Because most grad schools in Canada, you apply directly to a single supervisor to work with. So for me, it was really important to find someone that like I knew I was comfortable or would be comfortable working with. And that I was excited about the kind of research that they were doing. How about you? What's it like for the States?
I think when I applied, so I only applied to US schools. I took the risk and I knew, okay, this is what I wanted to do. A lot of schools in the US are very good at what my field is in quantum computing. So I did look for some supervisors. I knew from my past research experiences that like, oh, there's this really famous guy over here. They do really interesting work over there. And then people who maybe walk my path have also gone to the same universities in the US. So I think I had a pretty good shot. I think the difference really is that the US really does a mix of some departments are very specific about having a committee, and the committee is very like independent of who your advisor is, and they batch accept students. Other departments, the professor that you end up working with has 100% say in who he or she hires, and it's really up to you to find who, what program, what requirements there are, how you can probably read this off on the internet or through word of mouth through other people, but which programs are in the committee based, which programs have just a PI that will handpick you out of a bag. So I think it's really varied.
So which one did you end up with?
So
were you a committee one or an individual?
At MIT, it is by committee. So I did not know anyone personally on the committee, but I did end up speaking with people who told me about the process, and it's really about getting usually the younger professors, the professors who don't have tenure yet, to go through a full list of applicants and reading personal statements, reading reference letters, and seeing how well that fits in both to the research program that is currently going on here at MIT and to the culture of MIT, which is also a big topic. I also did get accepted to other schools. Yale was one where the committee was smaller, and I did get a chance afterwards to like speak one-on-one with professors who may or may not have handpicked me out of a bag. At other universities in the States, I think, mainly like Berkeley, it's very department specific. Stanford at Caltech, I believe they both have a mix of, sorry, Stanford might be committee based, but I do know that Caltech, you do get a PI who may handpick you out of a bag. So it's really varied, and a lot of effort needs to be done for you to do this. I think it has some pluses and minuses. A lot of what I felt here in the US, it's big and it's bold. So there are pluses in that, oh, maybe the advisors knows your old advisor at university and they know about your work or tangentially related work. So that might have an advantage there. Whereas a more broad committee-based acceptance process has a lot of like holistic approaches and is really based on how you present yourself and you show growth both academically and personally in your research statement and in the research experiences that you've had. So I think it's really a very deep and wide ocean here.
Yeah. So for me, I applied like specifically to my supervisor, knowing that she's who I wanted with. It's a little bit interesting because she's an adjunct. So she's not actually at the university, she's at the Royal BC Museum. So I have a co-supervisor who's actually at UVic, so kind of does more of the UVic stuff. But I didn't know who the co-supervisor would be until after I got accepted.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's very curious to see like new research fields opening up where you're co-supervised by someone. I know here, for example, at MIT, there are people in my lab who are co-supervised by someone at Harvard and at MIT, and that's really cool to me that they can get the best of both worlds, reach into one institution, and then look the other way and reach the other way. That's really nice. I do remember in my applications, oftentimes I'll ask you to mention, like, at least in the statement of purpose, like 2 or 3 potential supervisors that whose research like aligns with you. The supervisor I ended up working with, I did mention him in my letter, but I don't think he was one of the persons who it's a wild guess. It's probably not one of the persons who was in the committee reviewing. So it really is more of a black box problem.
I've heard from like some of my friends who are in grad school in the States that like you in these committee-based ones, you kind of like rotate supervisors when you first start. Is that what you experienced?
That's right. Some departments have a model where first year you're not immediately assigned to a lab or a supervisor. I know, for example, at Yale, in the physics department, you can get in and then not be immediately assigned to a supervisor. You'd be assigned to work on a project. You'll be taking courses. You'd be working with a supervisor, but the commitment to spend the rest of your PhD in that lab isn't made immediately. At MIT here, we had visit days where you could go in and have a very nice chat with potential supervisors, and you could commit any time between that and October. So I committed really, I think, pretty early in the process. I knew what I was going to do. I like the lab. I like the environment. I like my supervisor. But it does vary from school to school. I do know of situations where maybe there's a lot of friction. Maybe you didn't pick the right lab. It does happen a lot, unfortunately. So it's a really good opportunity for you to grow, but it's also, you have to thread carefully. I think what can help is you really knowing your interests, what motivates you, what doesn't motivate you, what the field that you're currently in looks like. If you're interested in another field, and look at both the industry and academia futures that you could have in those fields. So I think it does vary quite a lot, actually.
And you went direct to PhD, right? Masters, as I understand, aren't super popular in the States.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
So I think at least in the fields that I've seen, so um, masters, not all of them here might be funded. So it's not, you wouldn't get a stipend for a good majority of them. Again, it depends on the field and on, the university. For example, here at MIT, there is no external master's program. So you cannot apply just to get a master's, at least in my department. You will always earn your master's. If your direct entry undergrad, you will earn your master's along the way. So I'm currently a PhD student working for a master's degree, which will make me a
Interesting.
PhD candidate working for a PhD degree. So it's a little bit of
Yeah, so that's quite different from us here in Canada. Because there are some people who do direct entry PhD, but often it's you have to apply for a master's program, which are funded by the university, often to like the same amount of funding as a PhD. And that's like usually 2 years, and then we can apply for PhD after that.
yeah. I think the average length of a PhD, at least here, is 6 years. So it kind of adds up more or less, the 2 plus 4, if you are worried about timelines. But I think that also the length depends on the field. So, and it really depends on whether your school is well funded and your research area is well funded. You might or might not get a master's with funding. PhD,
Grad school funding is a whole other topic.
that is a big can of worms. You're right. That's a big can. That's great. Maybe we could talk about mentorship now. I think
Sure, yeah.
probably a
So
big part of what we both have done and what we've been on both sides, or like, I think I would guess so. I'll let you go first.
yeah. Yeah,
How
so
do you find in your transition from undergrad mentorship as a both a mentee and a mentor to like grad school mentorship? Maybe is both a mentee and a mentor.
um yeah, it's quite different. I find that so I'm in my first year of my master's, so like I haven't been in grad school that long. But I feel that in terms of mentors, um, I see like a different level of respect as a grad student than I did as an undergrad. Um, as a mentor myself, I don't really see that much of a difference. So I competed in science fair throughout high school, elementary school. So I had many mentors starting at that point. Some of them very good. Like I wouldn't be where I am without the guidance that they gave me. Some of them were a bit more problematic, definitely challenging to work with. And I see mentorship now as like a way of giving back to the community. So I mentor a lot of students for science fair, but I also work with the University of Victoria Women in Science Mentorship Network, because as a woman in geoscience fields, I've like experienced a lot of challenges, and I want to like give back and make sure that the community is like a better place for our next generations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've also noticed I think I could say stark change in the way mentorship and what the interests are, at least from the academic side. I did have a lot of mentors through high school, yes, even in undergrad, advising me on like avenues of research, ways to explore new ideas, ways to approach experiments. In grad school, it's changed. I've noticed that there are two, I don't want to say there are two, you know, ends of the spectrum, but maybe it's more dimensions. There are good mentors who will not only mentor you on a personal level, they will mentor you on an academic level, they'll become your friends, and that's all good. There are mentors who, I think, breeds from the environment you're in, can be department lab specific, who actually are interested in the results. They mentor you as a way to benefit themselves. So I've encountered that a little bit in undergrad, a little bit in grad school, but I definitely found that the broad range of people that you meet is really eye-opening, and you'll be able to notice, hey, maybe it's a little problematic here. It's really beneficial in other cases with the right kind of people. So you do notice where in the community you have, people that you should really reach out to check in on how they're doing, both at, the undergraduate, graduate, maybe like postdoctoral level too as well. And I think embedded in the role of an academic is both, like, I think you have responsibilities as both, okay, you're bettering, not only like society by, the advanced research that you do and the benefits and the understanding you bring to very, cutting edge topics, but you're also bettering a little institution. You have a responsibility to, I don't want to use too many like metaphors here, but like you have to be a beacon of light, because sometimes it can be a pretty dark world where research can, take a toll on your mental health. So a lot of it goes hand in, a lot of experiences you have as both a mentor and a mentee really are multidimensional. They're both like academic. They will either hurt you or help you academically, and they will also hurt you or help you personally. So a lot of effort that I think you have to put in, and I've seen that a lot more in grad school for mentorship.
Yeah, you really only get out as much as you put in, right? So
A lot of the time, yeah. I
yeah.
also did weirdly enough, I also did science fair, and the kind of mentorship style that I've carried on from like, okay, this is a crazy idea. You have you have zero resources. You have no clue what you're doing. But if you can like point really far into this weird question, it's so interesting. You will jump right into it. You will swim. You will find so many cool things. You will try to, hack them together with whatever you have. And then you turn around and you say, hey, I made this really cool thing. I feel like I'm still doing that to this day.
Yeah.
The,
I feel like really great mentors
yeah, go ahead.
also don't, sorry.
No.
I also feel like really great mentors don't necessarily have to be in your field, in that exact area of the crazy idea you're pointing to. You can have a really good mentor who's like in a completely different field, and they're still there to support you. They're there to help point you in the right direction, connect you with people.
Right. And I think one of the best things they do is that they make you believe in your research. Like they make you like not only be happy about it, but like think about, oh wow, this actually, helped this tangentially related field that might be a little obscure, and then like they needed this and they've been looking for this for 50 years and no one has found an answer. And here's a different way of looking at the problem. And so you believe in the curiosity that you can bring, which does transcend boundaries. Like I think it's a very real effect.
I also think it's important to recognize that like sometimes mentorship doesn't work out and you can get into really toxic mentorship relationships. And you have to realize when it's a time to like take a step away from that, and find something that's like better for you, better for your mental health, that's actually supporting you instead of bringing you down. I haven't seen that I haven't had that problem so much with mentors in grad school, but I definitely ran into that with some of my like science fair mentors, maybe some people in undergrad, and have had some peers who have also really ran into that.
I can concur with that. There's a lot of people who are maybe too deep into academia, I think I'd say, and who put the results over the people. I think it's the friendliest way to put it. I think in those cases, I think as a grad student, you really think about like, okay, you have the ability to plan, you think about many different things at once, but one of those things has to be your own mental health, your own well-being, without, you working every day, or like without having good health to work most days, you're not going to get anywhere. Nothing will be done. It's a very strong requirement that you take care of yourself first, and then you proceed to do what you need to do. And the people who may have thrown out the window, that order and things, you should really be careful about, what's best. I don't want to say what's best for you, but you should take an introspective look and decide, okay, maybe this isn't the way I want to go. There are other paths who maybe I can, keep my good health, keep going. And most of the time, this will work out. It will work out great. So it's always good to prioritize your own mental health.
Yes. And
I
most
think
schools will have like supports out there for mental health. I've used mine personally. The school ones aren't always necessarily the best. They're a great place to start, but like if you need further help, there's always help out there. I'm really big on like needing better mental health supports for undergrads, grad students, professors, pretty much anyone who works in post-secondary like needs better
Absolutely.
supports. So my department actually just had one of our professors become our mental health advocate and open himself up to like any students, undergrad or grad students who need someone to talk to, need a friendly face in the department to like guide them towards the proper resources. He's there. And I think that's a good step.
Yeah, I think it's trying to remember the acronym. Oh yeah. So I've also used maybe a similar resource yet at MIT. It's called refs. So these are typically upper year grad students who will act as a mentor and in an anonymous fashion. So these are people who will help you resolve conflicts, who will help you through, I want to say in general terms, life experiences or things that you have no idea what to do or how to do them or who to reach out to know how to do these things. So they are a very good safety net, and I've used them personally. When you want to reach out to someone, you're in a pickle, you have no idea what to do, they're the first person who, they're completely confidential and they will help you in absolutely everything. You can see their faces, you can choose not to see them, but you can definitely use them at any time. And the responsiveness is great, I think. So definitely finding, the people who not only make, are sort of a safety net around you, but are like, they're like little lamps that will guide you the right way.
I feel like that's one of the biggest things to take out of undergrad and grad school is like learning how and where to reach out for help, whether it be academic help, whether it be like personal help, help for mental health challenges, like really like listening to yourself that you need help if you need help and learning how to go about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think this is a good segue to our next topic, which is how to keep motivated in grad school. I can share my personal philosophy, but I really like to hear yours. What do you think? How do you motivate yourself in a dark Tuesday evening with nothing else to do but problems?
Dark Tuesday evenings. I don't think my Tuesday evenings are that dark. So I did a master's because I intend on doing a PhD. So in my field of paleontology, basically you cannot get a research position unless you have a PhD. And they also will often not hire you if you don't have a master's. And traditionally after PhD, you have to do like at least 3 postdocs. So I still got a long road ahead of me. So that's why I'm here in master's, because I got the end goals in sight. I want to do paleontology research. I am actually enjoying grad school quite a bit more than I enjoyed undergrad. I found it a lot harder to my motivation in undergrad. I was in a field that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I did my undergrad in geology when paleontology is really my passion. So I had to take like quite a few courses that didn't quite align with my interests and I struggled with. For me, in grad school, I'm really doing what I love. So that's how I stay motivated. But also like learning how to take breaks and accepting that you need to have time away from your research, from academics. So I'm on a curling team. I spend a lot of time with my cat. I do cosplay and just like setting boundaries for yourself as well. So I'm only going to work until this time. I'm not going to do schoolwork on the weekends. This is time for myself. And that really helps me stay motivated and focused when it's actually time to work on my research.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, wow.
How about you? I know you had some great
Yeah.
motivation.
I look at the work I do as a privilege. I think I chose grad school because I had the opportunity to do so. I was thankfully not, my paths were very open. I could pick any of them. I could realistically work even harder to make even more. But I think going to grad school and having the academic freedom to work on really interesting problems. And these problems, sometimes you might not get, you might get discouraged and, these are meaningless, these are insignificant. But if you really think about it and you ponder on a dark Tuesday evening, you can say, hey, 20 years down the road or X number of years down the road, someone will need this. And you've kind of experienced that yourself. Like you're reading a paper and, say you read a paper from the 1950s, computers were just starting to be, really useful machines. And someone thought of a cool idea and a way to do something. It's been hidden all these years. And then you've had a tangentially related idea and you really need to solve the problem. And then you look back at this person 50 years ago who's telling you, hey, you can do this. And it's mind-blowing that you can transcend time and affect yourself in academia. And your research does not stop there. I firmly believe that like the work that you put in, maybe it's 5 people, maybe it's 10 people, maybe it's 1 million people, maybe it's like 5, 20, maybe even like 100 years down the road, they will be personally and very directly affected from the work you do. So I think the work that you do as a grad student, it is a drop in the bucket. I'm not gonna lie, but you have the ability to pivot, you have the ability to solve any problem, and you dictate your own path. And then I guarantee you that whichever path you take, you'll be impacting someone at at X years down the road, with Y years of experience, or maybe in a different geographic location, but you will be impacting this person. And I think that really motivates me to work. I think as you said, to work hard on really hard problems, but also, hey, I need to rest for 2 days. I can do that as a grad student. I can do that on a Tuesday evening. I can call it quits and take it up on Thursday. Yeah, I think that's my motivation, I think.
What is, just like as an aside, what is your like hope that your research will end up, how it will end up impacting people?
Yeah, I think I thought about like I chose quantum computing. It's not guaranteed that this will solve every problem, but I chose to work on one of the hardest things that might or might not have one of the biggest impacts. It's all up in the air. It still is. So my goal is to build a tool, and I think the tool would be a computer of some sort, to build a tool that can impact the whole world positively. In the same way that if you think about like 1940s, 1950s, that the transistor, like the little component that builds is inside of every single chip that is not quantum computing now, that is classical, quote unquote, that is in silicon, that is in your laptop, phone, tablet, you name it. And it's really it's transcended like every layer of society. You can find impacts in biology, impacts in the medical field, impacts in transportation, impacts on like societal impacts from like social media, and it all is underpinned by one small invention, one tiny vacuum tube that someone decided, hey, this could be used to encode information and to do some sort of computation. And it's all abstract, but it's this really fun idea. 100 years, not 100, 80 years later, boom, we're addicted to phones. I think that's maybe my goal. I think the second part of that, actually, if I think about it, I feel like I have an affinity for, I don't want to say affinity, sorry, that's the wrong word. But big problems keep me up at night. Like, is the world going to have enough energy like 20 years down the road? Are those energy sources renewable? How can you stop making plastics that you don't degrade? Can you make pharmaceuticals that are less expensive and that are actually effective with less side effects? And these are problems that we do not have the tools to solve. I think we haven't solved. And part of the reason we haven't solved them is because we don't have the tools. So I think if I just take it from the most abstract point of view, if you find I don't want to say biggest, but the most widely applicable tool, and you build it and it works and it has an impact, maybe it works. That at least gives me like 5% happiness during the
For
week.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
For me, it's a little bit different. So people often ask, like, why study dinosaurs, right? They're all dead. They're died a long time ago. A lot of paleontology research is actually related to climate. So when the dinosaurs were alive, climate was changing a lot. They had like very high temperatures, variable CO2 levels. We see like transgressions and regressions of sea waves. So we're seeing sea level fall and rise. So by understanding like how the organisms in these environments are reacting to these changes, how the environments are reacting to the changes, you sort of get an idea into like how our extant, our ecosystems, so the ones we still have around today, may be reacting to climate change and the environmental changes we're seeing today.
Okay.
So the type of dinosaur I study, for example, is ankylosaurs, and they was called a keystone herbivore, which means that like they have a huge impact on the environment. Any changes to their behavior, whether they're present or absent in the environment, like completely changes the entire ecosystem. And they're herbivores, interestingly enough. And we still have keystone herbivores today, like elephants.
Oh.
So really, yeah. So understanding how this like, keystone herbivore in the past reacted to those changes and how in turn the environment reacted to them reacting can like give us some idea into how our extant ones may react.
Oh, that's
So not solving like human problems so much as environmental.
they were alive for very long, so we can learn something from that.
Yeah, we are closer in time to T-Rex than T-Rex was to Stegosaurus.
Kids TV has lied to me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
And technically birds are dinosaurs, so they're still alive.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Next time I look at a bird, then I will ponder why they've been alive for so long.
A very successful lineage.
Yeah. Okay. I think we covered the next topic, which is applying for grad school, but maybe we can talk about maybe a little bit more of the application process or like timelines.
Yeah, sure. So for me, like one of the most important things when applying to grad school is getting good references. Those reference letters are so important. And make sure when you're applying that you really consider the person that you're asking to be your reference. Have you worked closely with them? Did you have a good experience working with them? Can they talk about your research? Can they talk about why you'd be good for grad school? I've heard from supervisors that they like grad school supervisors, they really take those recommendation letters into account.
Absolutely. Yeah. What were the timelines for your programs like? Was it all winter? Was it maybe like
No, so I applied to start in the September term, but all the schools I applied to had different application times. I also have applied for like NSERC CGSM, so the grad student grant, a master's grant. So you can apply for that for your first year of grad school. So before you even know if you get into a master's, you can apply to it for your first year of master's. So I think that was actually like the first due date I had was for that. So I had to have an idea of like, if I went to the school that I was applying for it with, what would my research topic be? Who would my supervisor be? And talk with her about the project.
okay.
And then the university deadlines for Canada were mostly like in the spring, like I think January, February. And then I also applied to some UK ones. So I applied to Bristol and Edinburgh, which are very expensive for Canadian students, which is part of why I stayed in Canada. There's the funding, the stipend that master students are given does not match with how much it costs to be an international student there. So for those ones, their deadlines are actually quite late. I was actually told for Edinburgh that like they still will receive applications up to like a week before the term starts. So yeah,
The system's different for sure in Europe.
it's quite different. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? What were your deadlines like?
Weirdly, I think they were all like like 90% of them December 15th or
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
remember one day like everything was due and I was rushing. Admittedly, I was rushing. I was like in my mojo, like I'm typing my last few edits.
Yeah.
Hyping myself up. This is a good statement of purpose. It sounds great. This is all intellectual. With the exception of like two programs, maybe Berkeley, one department was December 1st. Stanford maybe was the day after or the day before, but it was like December 1st or December 15th for almost everything, at least.
I was definitely stressing about my applications. My parents did not do grad school. So I was sort of like the first one in like my immediate family to do grad school. My best friend is in grad school, but I just did not really know what to expect, what they were looking for when I was applying. So like the statement of purpose, I was like asking my friends like the statement of intent, what am I supposed to put in here? What are they looking for?
Yeah.
So that was very stressful. As well as just like, oh no, am I gonna make an like spelling mistake on my application, and is this gonna like get me rejected?
I found spelling mistakes after I applied.
Funnily enough, so did I. I just spelled my name for UVic, They had me as Emily Class because it was right. My last name was right on everything else on the application. Just one spot it was misspelled. I think it was like the last thing I typed in at like 11 o'clock before I hit submit. So I had to go through a process of getting my name changed before I had even been accepted because my references couldn't submit their letter until my name was fixed.
Oh, wow.
But for all of you out there worried about these mistakes, it did not hamper me getting in. Like, they don't really care about that kind of mistake. It's okay. You don't need to stress about it.
Yeah. One thing you can't misspell is professors. You can't misspell.
Yeah, don't misspell
professors.
their names.
You
Your own name,
100%
you
have to.
can.
Yeah. I did find that actually some of the schools I applied to, they had a writing center or they had some online resource that was like oriented to how do you write a CV? How do you write a statement of purpose? How do you write a faculty job application? And in one of those,
I
I
find,
believe, at least at MIT, I used their template very heavily.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
feel like there's a lot more for how to do a CV than there is for how to do a statement of purpose or intent. Between me and like a lot of the other Canadian grad students that I'm friends with and like current undergrads, most of like our templates is just past students statement of purpose or intent that have gotten passed out or we share with each other, that there isn't like much of a set template for us to use.
Yeah.
So that's a tip for you. Connect with grad students of where you're applying or like even at the university you're at in your undergrad, because they can help you out with the application process. Schulich Network is great. I'm sure like any of the Schulich leaders in your area would be like happy to help you out.
Yeah. And weirdly enough, the writing sample I used that was authored by someone in my lab currently.
Oh, nice.
It was interesting to find out who wrote it. It was really good. Yeah. I do recommend taking time to do the research early and to plan it out. Rushing things is never a good idea. It can't work. Like there's a chance it might work, but how big that chance is, who knows? But it definitely decreases as time goes on. So
yeah, like reach out. If you're applying to Canadian grad schools, consider reaching out to potential supervisors like a year and a half before like you would start grad school.
Yeah. This is
because that's something you need to think about. They might not be accepting students for when you want to apply. That's something to know. They might have like their own special process to go to. It's really important to contact that supervisor before you apply.
Yeah, I think now that we're on, I guess, the other side, or we can say it depends on a few things. It probably depends. Is the lab funded? Can the lab take more students? Is the professor like, maybe this is a really good lab size. I don't want to take in more students, or the lab's too big. I am definitely not taking more students. Or like, I'm about to retire in 2 years. Do I want to take another 5-year commitment? So, or maybe this is I think I probably found this out once, but check if the professors are still active in research. Check if they haven't moved to like admin positions or or retired. They rarely update their CV, like their personal websites or their lab websites. It's a really good idea to check, and it never hurts to email. But yeah, it's definitely a big point.
And like in your email to them, indicate why you're interested in working with them. They don't want to hear that you want to come to that city, that lab because the temperature is nice. It's like a big city and you've always wanted to live there. They want to hear that you want to work with them. You want to be a part of this research that they're doing. You have these ideas. Put that into even your initial email, and you'll get a much better response.
And the good part of, not even for this, but for the whole application, is it takes a bit of work, but you should research your field, and you should understand the problems that are currently at the cutting edge, that are problems that most likely either you'll be working on, somebody's already working on there, but problems that show that, one, you understand the field, you understand the techniques that you should, have acquired, and you should highlight that you have these skills and experiences. And three, that you can speak somewhat intellectually about, maybe, okay, pause in this direction, maybe consider this, or you can maybe consider, hey, you can say in your statement of purpose, oh, I want to do research here. No one's really explored it. It can potentially be, and you usually, even if you're not confident, sound confident while doing this. Like, oh, this could really be a nice idea for X, Y, Z reason. And showing that level of initiative and genuine interest will really go a long way in your applications. Yeah. Okay. I guess our last topic is, what do you do before the application? Like, how do you do research in undergrad? What were your experiences? Were you like a lab rat, or always get on research?
So being someone who did science fair in elementary school and high school, I was like very familiar with coming up with my own research topics, going into the lab to do research. At that time, it was geochemistry research on fossils, which I still absolutely love. So I came into my undergrad knowing that I wanted to take part in research during my undergrad. So I just sent like emails out. I went through the list of faculty, tried to find anyone who had some sort of like tangentially related research area to what I wanted to do, and just kept sending out emails. It took a long time, but eventually one person responded. I met up with them. They were not really the right fit for what kind of research I wanted to do, but they knew who would be. And so then they directly took me and introduced me and connected me with that person, who took me and connected me with someone else who was the right person to work with at the time. So in my first year, second year, I was doing research on ice age, Pleistocene megafauna and Neanderthal material. So it wasn't really my own research topic. It was like a part of someone else's research, but I was still in the lab doing research. And then British Columbia does undergrads a little bit differently than some of the other Canadian provinces. So no matter if you're doing an honors or just like a regular major degree, they're both 4 years. They're all 4-year degrees. I know in Ontario, just regular honors or not honors degrees are 3 years for science. So I didn't do honors because it required taking some courses that I really did not need to take for my degree, and would actually be taking me away from the courses that I felt were more important to the research and field I wanted to go into. But I did, through connecting with that person, those two people that were the right area of research, get them to agree to allow me to do a directed studies project, which essentially is sort of like your honors thesis without being an honors student. So it's a research project. It's your own research idea. You work through it. And that was actually quite interesting for me, because my primary mentor supervisor for that project ended up no longer being at UBC when I was doing that research. Okay. So she was at the University of Manitoba. So I had a UBC supervisor in name only. He wanted nothing to do with the actual research. It was just the UBC connection. And then my primary supervisor was several provinces over, but I was still able to do the research. Okay. And then I was also working with someone in Alberta for that project. So also, if your university doesn't have exactly the people you want to work with, exactly the kind of research you want to do, don't be afraid to reach out to people at other universities. They can still connect you in. So I was at UBC, I was working with people from University of Manitoba. I was working with people from the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta. Yeah,
Mm.
so
Oh,
that's
wow.
how I ended up being able to do dinosaur research in undergrad in a school that really did not do dinosaur paleontology work.
Yeah.
What
Wow.
is your story with undergrad research?
Uh, Maybe it's a little more specific to my program. My program has it has a lot of things. At least engineering science at U of T does programs specifically for first years to do research, and it's actually not exclusively of at U of T. There's this really nice program. I didn't partake in it, but uh, it's called SROP Global. So Engineering Science Research Opportunities Program for students specifically for first years to go abroad in your first year and do research.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think at least in the little bubble of engineering, I have no idea what anyone does outside of engineering, sadly. In our little bubble, it is machine, I guess. I would say that labs definitely need like students to work on projects or students who are willing to do it. There's sometimes the funding to do it, but what you said about the fit is really, really important in engineering. So there is the very, very common occurrence that there is this really, insignificant problem. The research project is heading in a completely different direction, but you just have to automate this and you end up being a lab monkey for, one summer. So you have to really watch out how, where, and with who you do research with. And I think what you said of reaching out to the other universities is great. My experience was that I reached out to someone actually before. So I knew the professor, a very nice professor at UofT who I did research with from high school actually, for my science fair project as well. So I continued doing research in this lab. I mean, 2 more summers. Then the kind of research I did, I made sure that tangentially I could really get into the next research based on my previous research. So I started doing research on neuromorphic computing. So computing that mimics what your brain does with neurons and synapses with like classical circuits, which are like little, room temperature, not quantum at all, not superconducting. Then I switched to one side of that. So I stopped doing classical circuits and I went for superconducting circuits. So circuits that have zero resistance, really cool system, very cold, obviously 4 Kelvin on average, but still for neuromorphic computing. And so my transition in research was very dictated in like, how do you really find the right fit based on your experiences? And my last step, which is where I'm now, instead of using superconducting electronics, superconducting circuits for neuromorphic computing, I'm using superconducting circuits for quantum computing. So it's really takes a lot of, I don't want to say effort, but it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like exploring and then trying to, as you said, like mass emailing and trying to find the right fit. That's definitely one of the biggest.
Don't be afraid to like go to a lab that's like maybe a little outside of what you would normally
Yeah,
like want to do or normally want to research to like get that experience. Maybe you'll end up finding that you really love it, or maybe you'll find something from that area that you can like pull into what you wanted to do. So it's not always a bad thing to like take a side step from what you're planning, like you really want to do. So for me, that side step was working on Neanderthal and Pleistocene material, because before that I was like dinosaurs, only dinosaurs. But this is what was available. So I helped out with that, and I definitely learned some useful things from that project.
Yeah. Another good thing is if you have peers that are, I wouldn't say like, are maybe ahead of you, but they're ahead of you because they're 1 year older, but you can definitely tell from, I don't want to say undergraduate alumni of a lab, how a lab is going to feel. You can very immediately get a sense of what your role will be. Will you be a code monkey? will will you have a meaningful role in the lab? So for
I'd
those
say that's like,
for those reasons, definitely switch fields if you want and feel like it's really cool. That is a really good important point.
I would
It's
say you bring up a good point there too about talking to like students who've worked with professors and in the lab. That's so important, both for like doing undergraduate research and also for applying to grad school for working with your supervisors. That would be like one of my #1 pieces of advice. Talk to past students or existing students. They can provide so much advice. You will get an idea like before you even apply if that lab's going to be a good fit for you, if that supervisor is going to be a good fit for you. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the people who walked in your shoes,
Yeah.
and they're really just behind, like ahead of you by 8 months. So it's a cycle of 8 months. So they applied 8 months
Yeah.
ago. They worked 4 months ago. You will get like hot off the press information for sure. So
Like I definitely avoided some like potentially bad situations by talking to past students
yeah,
of the people
and
I was considering.
and this is always like, you think this might be obscure. It is not obscure at all. You will
No.
really tell where you'll be happy, where you will not be happy.
Yeah, it's really, really important to find a place that you'll be happy working in.
All right. I think that might be an hour, roughly.
Yeah.
So, awesome chat. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you as well. And we can maybe, you can always reach me either through email or maybe on LinkedIn or some form of communication. Maybe can
Yeah,
always
me as well, for sure.
to help anyone. Very
Me as well.
I can share a lot of perspectives. I'm happy to do so. All right. Okay. Well, you have a good night, Emily. It's great
You
talking to
too.
you.
Bye.
All right.